Vivienne Dawson didn't see the waiter until a strong arm yanked her backward, saving her from being body slammed by a full tray of wine glasses and hors d'oeuvres. "Watch it." The man barked not at her, but at the poor waiter who stumbled and barely kept the tray from crashing onto the marble floor. Vivienne blinked, her breath caught halfway in her throat. Her back was pressed against a solid chest, the scent of expensive cologne and something darker like warm leather wrapped around her senses. Thank you," she managed, looking up. The man who just saved her from public embarrassment or a trip to the ER was tall, with dark hair slicked back like he'd just stepped out of a GQ cover shoot. He looked like he didn't belong at this charity gala. No, he looked like he owned it. He let go of her slowly, his hands lingering at her waist a second too long. "You okay?" Vivienne nodded, still stunned. "I didn't even see him." "I did," he said, eyes scanning her face like he was trying to figure something out. "You were looking at that painting." She glanced at the art installation beside them. "Yeah, it's hypnotizing. Apparently almost deadly," he added dryly, then flashed the first hint of a grin. She laughed, breathless. "Guess I owe you a drink or something." "Oh, you definitely owe me something." His voice was teasing, but his eyes stayed on hers a beat longer than they needed to. Before she could respond, a short older man in a tux rushed over. "Mr. Orion, so sorry about that." "That waiter is new, I'll handle it." "Mr. Orion," Vivienne's brows lifted slightly. The name rang a bell, but she couldn't place it. "It's fine, Glenn," the man said, barely glancing at the staff member. "No harm done." And then he turned back to her, his attention laser-focused. "You work here?" Vivienne shook her head. "No, I got invited last minute, my friend's on the planning committee." He tilted his head, intrigued. "You don't exactly look like the usual crowd." She couldn't tell if that was an insult or a compliment. "Thanks, I think," he chuckled. "It's a compliment. I'm Adrian Orion." And just like that, it clicked. Billionaire. Tech investor, CEO of Orion Dynamics. The guy who built his empire before 35. She'd seen his face on magazine covers, usually with captions like "The Reluctant Mogul" or "The Billionaire Who Hates Interviews." "I've heard of you," she said, trying not to sound impressed. "I'm Vivienne Dawson." "Well, Vivienne Dawson, since you owe me a drink." "Care to join me?" He motioned toward the bar. She hesitated. Not because she didn't want to, but because this didn't feel real. She was wearing a borrowed dress, her heels pinched, and she'd been planning to leave early and eat ramen at home. But he was looking at her like he had all the time in the world and like she was the only person in the room. "Screw it." "Sure," she said. "Let's get that drink." They walked toward the bar, shoulders brushing, and for a second she forgot what universe she was in. Everything about Adrian Orion screamed control: his posture, his confidence, the way people looked at him as he passed. Like he owned the air around him. But when they sat down at the bar and he asked, "So, Vivienne, what do you actually do?" He sounded genuinely curious. "I work at the library." "Downtown," she said. "Not glamorous, but it's mine." He leaned in, elbows on the bar. "You mean to tell me a woman who almost got flattened by champagne flutes is a librarian, assistant librarian," she corrected. "But yeah, I like it," he said. "Unexpected." "That's me," she said lightly. "Unexpected and slightly clumsy." He laughed again like a real laugh, and she felt it in her chest. They talked for a while about books, about how she hated small talk, how he hated being treated like a price tag. He didn't brag, didn't name drop. And when she mentioned that she loved the old parts of the city, the places most people forgot, he listened, really listened. At one point he pulled out a card and handed it to her. It was black matte and had nothing on it except his name and a number. "Call me sometime," he said. "Or don't." "But I hope you do." She hesitated, then slipped it into her clutch. "I might." He stood, clearly needing to go be important somewhere else. "You know," he said, looking down at her with this half-smile, "I've been to 100 of these events. Never once met someone like you." Before she could say anything, he was gone, swept away by another donor, another handshake, another camera. Vivienne sat there for a second, heart pounding. What the hell just happened? The next morning, she was back at the library, shelving returns when her coworker Mia cornered her. "Okay, Spill, you left the gala with a literal Greek god." "I didn't leave with him," she said. "We just talked." Mia narrowed her eyes. "You're telling me Adrian Orion handed you his card and you haven't called him?" Vivienne pulled it out of her bag and stared at it. "I don't know, Mia. He's him and I'm me. So what? Call him. What's the worst that happens? He doesn't remember you," Vivienne sighed. "No. The worst that happens is I do call him, and he actually likes me." Mia blinked. "Wow, that's actually kind of deep." Vivienne pocketed the card again. She didn't call him that day. But when a black town car pulled up outside the library the next afternoon, and Adrian Orion stepped out of it holding coffee and a bag of croissants like it was the most normal thing on earth, she nearly dropped the stack of books in her arms. He walked in like he belonged there, eyes scanning the shelves until they landed on her. "You didn't call," he said simply, holding out the coffee. "I didn't think you'd notice." "I did." He handed her the cup. "I brought almond milk." "You mentioned you were lactose intolerant." She stared at him like he was a puzzle that didn't make sense. "Why are you here?" she asked softly. "Because I couldn't stop thinking about you," he said, "and I don't usually chase people. But for some reason, I want to chase you." Vivienne looked up at him, heart racing, and just like that, something shifted between them, something real. Vivienne followed him to the café table tucked into the far corner of the library's reading atrium, her coffee warming her hands more than she wanted to admit. The clack of her flats on the polished floor echoed faintly against the tall windows as she kept her pace steady beside him. Adrian didn't speak at first. He just sat, crossing one leg over the other like he had nowhere else to be. "I'm not sure what to do," she said, finally breaking the silence. "You showing up here, it's throwing off my entire sense of reality." He rested one elbow on the table, fingers tapping once against the paper cup. "I figured it might." She narrowed her eyes. "Then why come?" "Because I'd rather be here than in a boardroom full of people pretending they like me." She blinked. "That's surprisingly honest." "I don't usually say things I don't mean. It's one of my less charming traits." Vivienne leaned back slightly, watching him. "So what do you want from me?" He tilted his head. "That's a loaded question." "I'm serious," she said. "People don't just show up with pastry bags and almond milk lattes unless they have a reason. I want to get to know you. Outside of ballrooms and awkward introductions." "You don't even know what that means," she said, shaking her head. "You don't live in the same world I do, Adrian." "Then show me yours." She studied him, the way his tone never wavered, the way he didn't fidget or fill the silence with noise. He wasn't trying to impress her, he wasn't even trying to explain himself. "I'm not a project," she said. "I didn't think you were," he replied, "but you're something, and I want to find out what." She tapped her nail against the side of her coffee cup, thinking. "You're not used to being told no, are you?" "I hear it more than you'd expect," he said. "But not when I ask someone to take a walk with me." She hesitated. "Right now," he stood, "unless you're hiding from your manager. I'm due for a break in 10 minutes, she said. "I'll wait." They walked through the sculpture garden behind the building, where ivy climbed the brick walls and stone benches sat under arched trellises. It was quiet, except for the wind brushing through the leaves and the occasional distant honk of a city bus turning the corner. "Do you ever get tired of people staring at you?" she asked as they passed a couple glancing curiously in their direction. "They're not staring at me," he said. "They're wondering why I'm walking around with someone who doesn't look like she wants to be impressed." Vivienne looked up at him. "What does that mean?" He nodded toward a patch of purple flowers blooming near the base of the wall. "You're not dazzled, that's rare." "Should I be?" He met her gaze, and for a moment she felt the weight of his full attention settle on her like sunlight through glass. "No." "That's what makes this interesting." They sat down on a bench. Vivienne crossed her arms. "So this is a game to you?" "It's not," he said. "I'm not playing anything." "Then why me?" she asked. "You could have anyone, literally anyone." "I don't want anyone," he said. "I want the woman who looks at a billionaire like he's just a guy in a suit taking up space in her library." She laughed under her breath. Maybe you are, maybe, he said, but I'm still here. They lapsed into silence. It wasn't awkward, it was the kind of silence that asked questions without demanding answers. Finally, she said, I'm not interested in being someone's curiosity. You're not, he said. You're the storm I didn't see coming. Vivienne stared straight ahead. You talk like you're used to getting what you want. I am, he said. But that doesn't mean I don't earn it. She glanced at him sideways. And what makes you think you can earn me? He smiled, not confidently, but like someone who'd accepted a challenge he wanted to lose himself in. Because I'm going to try. That night, he invited her to dinner. She almost said no, almost convinced herself to pretend none of this had happened. But as she stood in her apartment, staring at her reflection in the mirror, she knew she wouldn't. The car he sent wasn't ostentatious. It was quiet, sleek, and driven by a man who greeted her by name and opened the door without a word. The kind of silence that said everything had already been arranged. Adrian was waiting at the restaurant's private rooftop terrace, wearing a tailored navy jacket and no tie. The table was set for two, lit by candlelight and the fading gold of the sunset. The skyline stretched in every direction, glittering like a promise. You clean up well, she said as she approached. You look like a secret I want to keep, he replied, standing to pull out her chair. She sat, her heart thudding in her chest like it didn't know how to handle any of this. Why here? She asked, lifting her menu. Because I own the building, and because I thought you'd like the view. She set the menu down. You're not going to try to buy my interest, are you? Wouldn't work, he said. I already know that. The waiter poured wine, and they ate slowly, the conversation drifting from strange childhood hobbies to their most irrational fears. He told her he hated elevators. She told him she couldn't sleep without a fan running. He didn't laugh. He told her that made perfect sense. As dessert arrived, sliced figs with honey and pistachio cream, he leaned forward. I've never done this before, he said. She raised a brow. Dinner? No, he said. Tried to court someone who makes me nervous. You're nervous? He nodded once. You make me forget the script. Vivienne felt something shift in the air between them, something subtle but undeniable. I don't know what this is, she said. Neither do I, he replied. But I'm not letting it go. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The city stretched below them, and for the first time in a long time, Vivienne felt like she wasn't just watching life happen from the outside. She was in the middle of something, and it had only just begun. Vivienne stepped into the glass-walled gallery and immediately regretted not Googling the dress code. Everyone around her floated in designer evening wear, sipping champagne and murmuring about brushstroke techniques and emotional palettes. She tugged at the sleeve of her vintage blazer, the only thing she had that wasn't worn at the elbows, and scanned the room for Adrian. He'd invited her 3 days ago casually while they were sitting in a quiet corner of a used bookstore he'd asked to visit. She'd expected the usual Billionaire haunt, sleek, sterile, intimidating. But instead, he'd asked her to show him a place she loved. She had. And he hadn't even blinked at the creaky floorboards or the crooked stacks of rare paperbacks. Vivienne, came his voice behind her. She turned, and there he was, no bodyguards, no entourage, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her rent but looked like it had been made for him alone. His tie was loosely knotted, his hands in his pockets like he belonged, but didn't care to prove it. I was beginning to wonder if you'd changed your mind, he said. I almost did, she admitted. Then I remembered I promised you I'd try. He studied her for a second, then offered his arm. Let's try together. As they moved through the gallery, Adrian greeted people with polite nods but didn't stop. He kept her close, steering her away from conversations that smelled like networking. When they reached a quieter alcove lined with abstract cityscapes, he stopped in front of a canvas that looked like New York melting into silence. I bought this whole collection last year, he said. She tilted her head. All of them, he nodded. The artist was about to give up. I thought that would have been a waste. Do you always intervene when people are about to quit? Only when they are worth saving, he said, turning to her. Which brings me to something I wanted to ask you. Vivienne folded her arms. If this is about offering me a job, don't. It's not, he said. It's about offering you time with me, she frowned. That's not a thing people offer. It is when you have none to spare, he said. I'm leaving next week, London, then Paris, business. But I want you to come with me, she stared at him. I have a life here, I know. I'm not asking you to give it up, just to step outside it for a little while. That's not something I do. I don't just get on planes with men I barely know. You do if you want to find out what happens next, he said. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her breath caught somewhere between excitement and disbelief. I'd pay for everything, he added, but not because I think you need it. Because I don't want money to be the reason you say no. She looked away. You really believe everyone has a price? He leaned closer, voice lower. I believe some moments are worth more than what we're afraid of, and I think you're afraid this might be real. Vivienne's chest tightened. Of course I'm afraid it's real, because if it is, then I have something to lose. Adrian didn't look away. So do I. Before she could decide whether that was terrifying or comforting, a woman approached them, tall, with glossy blonde hair and a gown that shimmered under the gallery lights. She reached for Adrian's arm without hesitation. There you are, she said, her voice sharp and familiar. I've been looking all over. Adrian stiffened almost imperceptibly. Vivienne, this is Natalie. We used to work together. Natalie's eyes flicked to Vivienne's blazer, then down to her boots. How quaint. Vivienne took a step back. I should let you two catch up. Adrian turned instantly. No, stay, but the moment had shifted. The air between them, once electric, now hung heavy with something unspoken. Excuse me, Vivienne said quietly, and walked toward the exit without waiting for a response. Outside, the wind had picked up, tugging at her coat and making her wish she'd worn something thicker. She stood under the awning, unsure if she was angry, embarrassed, or just exhausted. Probably all three. A minute later, the glass doors opened and Adrian stepped out, his tie undone now, his expression unreadable. She's not what you think, he said. I'm not sure what I think right now, Vivienne replied. Except that I don't belong here. You belonged the second you walked in, she shook her head. You barely even introduced me. I didn't know how to explain you, he said. Because you're not a category, Vivienne exhaled slowly. I can't compete with that world, Adrian. I don't have the clothes or the polish or the patience to smile through condescension. I'm not asking you to compete, I'm asking you to trust me. She looked up at him. Why me? Because you challenge me in all the ways I didn't know I needed, he said. And because when you're not around, nothing feels right. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the low hum of traffic and the flutter of flags overhead. I can't go to London, she said, but I can meet you at the airport. He stepped closer. So you're saying yes. I'm saying I'm not ready to walk away. He reached for her hand, his touch steady, grounding. Then that's enough for me, he said, and for the first time since she'd stepped into his orbit, Vivienne didn't feel like she was drifting. She felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. The private terminal smelled like espresso and quiet opulence. Vivienne stood near the tinted window, watching the jet being prepped in the early morning light. She wore a fitted coat she'd borrowed from her friend, Mia, soft, slate blue wool that felt like armor, and clutched a carry-on bag that held more nerves than clothing. The silence around her was heavy with anticipation, but she didn't move until she heard footsteps behind her. Adrian approached without a word, stopping at her side. I didn't sleep, she said, eyes fixed on the tarmac. Neither did I, he replied. Vivienne turned to face him. So where are we going first? London, then a few meetings in Milan, but I've cleared time between. We'll make our own itinerary. She studied him, trying to decipher the shift in his expression. You look like you're about to say something you don't want to. He hesitated. There's a gala in Milan. I wasn't going to mention it, but now that you're coming, I want you there. She narrowed her eyes. You mean another black tie circus where I'm the wrong kind of guest? No, this one's different, he said. It's hosted by someone I trust, less cameras. Fewer people trying to bleed me dry. And what would I be doing? He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out a long, slim box. Wearing this. Vivienne opened it slowly. Inside lay a necklace delicate platinum links holding a single oval-cut sapphire that shimmered like twilight. I can't accept this. You can, he said, because it's not about money, it's about making sure you feel like you belong. She snapped the box shut. I already told you I don't want to be turned into someone else. He stepped closer, voice low. Then I'll stop trying to fit you into my world. Let's make one that works for both of us. For a moment, neither of them moved, then she said, fine. But I'm picking the music on the plane. A ghost of a smile passed over his face. Deal. The flight passed in a blur of sunrise skies and quiet glances. Adrian didn't work. He sat beside her, watching old films with subtitles and asking her opinion on everything from the cinematography to the score. When turbulence hit over the Atlantic, he reached for her hand and didn't let go until the cabin stilled again. By the time they landed in London, something between them had solidified less like lightning, more like gravity. She could feel it in the way he opened every door, not out of habit, but with intention. In the way he walked beside her through unfamiliar streets, never in front. Their first night in the townhouse he kept near St. James's Park was quiet. He made tea clumsily, burning his fingers and refusing to let her help. They sat on a velvet couch, watching the rain blur the city outside. Do you ever miss before? She asked. He looked at her over the rim of his mug. Before what? Before everything got expensive, he leaned back, considering. Sometimes, but not for the reasons you think. I miss not being expected to know everything. I miss being allowed to fail. Vivienne nodded slowly. It's strange, isn't it? We spend our whole lives trying to prove we're capable, and then when people believe it, they stop giving us permission to mess up. Adrian set his mug down. That's why you're different. You don't need me to be anything but real. I don't want your success, she said. I want the parts of you you're afraid to show anyone else. He stared at her, something raw flickering in his expression. Then I hope you're ready for what that means. The gala in Milan was held in a converted palazzo, its carved archways draped with velvet and candlelight. Vivienne wore a dress borrowed from a high-end boutique that Adrian had reserved for her privately. She hadn't asked about the price, and he hadn't offered. Inside, the crowd was smaller, more subdued. She recognized no one, and that helped. He stayed by her side, introducing her not by title, but by name, his hand resting lightly at the small of her back. Halfway through the evening, a woman with silver hair and a sharp, curious gaze approached them. You're the librarian, she said in a lilting Italian accent. Vivienne blinked. I am. The woman smiled. He hasn't stopped talking about you since the painting gala in New York. I wanted to see what kind of woman could make Adrian Orion cancel a meeting with the French Minister of Finance. Vivienne turned to him slowly. You did what? He shrugged. You were more interesting. The older woman laughed softly and walked away, leaving Vivienne standing in the middle of the ballroom, stunned. You canceled a meeting with a government official to talk to me about books. I've made billion-dollar decisions in under 2 minutes, he said. Spending an hour with you felt more important, she stared at him. That's reckless. It was, he agreed. And I'd do it again. Later, on the balcony overlooking the city, Vivienne leaned against the stone railing, breathing in the scent of jasmine and distant smoke. Adrian stood beside her, watching the lights flicker below. I think I'm falling in love with you, she said. He turned to her slowly. Then I have a confession. She waited. I already did. She let the words settle between them, heavy and bright. I'm not ready for forever, she said. But I'm ready for you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn at the edges. She unfolded it. A hand-drawn sketch of a small corner bookstore with ivy along the bricks and a sign that read, Dawson and Orion. I bought the building last week, he said. We'll run it together, your way. Vivienne felt her chest tighten. You're serious, he nodded. I don't want a life that doesn't have you in it. She wrapped her arms around his waist, pressing her face into his chest. Then don't ever think about walking away. He held her tighter. I couldn't if I tried. And in the heart of a city that didn't know their names, under a sky full of stories yet to be written, they began the first chapter of something neither of them had planned, but both of them were finally ready for. The sound of a bell above the door chimed softly as Vivienne stepped into the newly renovated storefront. The air smelled of fresh paint and old paper, sunshine pouring in through the tall front windows. The shelves were only half full, but the worn ladder that rolled along the built-in bookcases and the hand-carved reading bench by the window made it feel lived in already. Adrian was crouched near a stack of unopened boxes in the back, sleeves rolled up, shirt untucked, hair slightly mussed. He looked up when he heard her footsteps and pushed to his feet. "You're early," he said, brushing dust off his hands. "I couldn't wait." She walked further in, fingertips trailing along the edge of the wooden counter. "I didn't expect it to feel like this." "Like what?" "Like home." He crossed the space between them and handed her a folded piece of paper. "Final inspection came through. We're cleared to open next weekend." She read it, her pulse quickening. "That's soon." "I figured we were ready." Vivienne looked around again, eyes landing on the small brass plaque near the entranceway. She walked over and crouched to read it aloud. "To the woman who made the world slow down." She looked up. "You had this made." I wanted people to know the truth. She stood, brushing her hands on her skirt. "What if I'm not enough to make this work?" "You've already made it work," he said. "The rest is just shelves and stories." She exhaled, letting the weight of it settle in her chest. "You're not afraid, are you?" "I used to be," he said. "But then I realized success doesn't matter if there's no one there to share it." A knock on the glass drew their attention. A delivery man waved from the curb next to a small moving truck. Vivienne followed Adrian outside where several crates were being unloaded. One was long and flat, wrapped tightly in protective cloth. "What is that?" she asked. Adrian nodded at the delivery man, who carefully removed the wrapping to reveal a large canvas, the cityscape painting she'd been staring at the night they met. "He said he didn't sell originals," she breathed. "I made him an offer that came with a condition, that it hang in the place that started everything." Vivienne brushed her fingers over the edge of the frame. "You remember everything?" "I remember you," he said. They spent the rest of the afternoon placing books, uncrating rare editions, and arranging the reading nook with pillows she'd picked out from a flea market in Florence. Adrian didn't hover. He asked questions when he didn't understand her system, and followed her lead when she changed her mind halfway through rearranging the fiction section. As the sun dipped low, casting amber light across the shelves, she slid a last book into place and turned to him. "We did it." He pulled her into his arms, resting his forehead against hers. "No, you did it." "I just followed your map. You never follow anyone." "I do when the path leads to you." Later that evening they stood in the doorway of the shop, hands clasped as the last of the light faded from the sky. The street outside was quiet, the hum of the city softened by the promise of night. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't pulled me out of the way that night?" she asked. "I think about it every day," he said. "And I thank whatever twist of fate made me look up at the right second." She leaned into his side. "You changed everything," he kissed the top of her head. "So did you." A week later the store opened. The line outside wrapped around the building. People came for the books, but they stayed for the warmth. Vivienne greeted each guest with the same calm confidence she had when she reshelved volumes in the downtown library. Adrian floated in and out, managing logistics, signing first editions, and occasionally sneaking her coffee when her voice grew hoarse. Mia flew in to visit, walking through the door with a grin and a dramatic gasp at the Dacre. "You live in a literal romance novel," she whispered, elbowing Vivienne. "Please tell me he still forgets to charge his laptop like a normal person." "He uses a fountain pen now," Vivienne whispered back. "Apparently he's in his handwritten business decisions era." Adrian caught them laughing, raised an eyebrow, and pulled Vivienne aside a moment later. "You're glowing," he said. "I'm exhausted. You still glow." That night, after the last customer left and the store lights dimmed, Adrian took her hand and led her upstairs to the loft apartment above the store. She decorated it herself: rustic shelves, soft rugs, mismatched chairs she'd found at antique markets. He led her to the center of the room where a small velvet box waited on the table. She froze. "Is this?" "Yes." He opened it slowly. Inside was a ring unlike anything she'd expected, a simple band with a single sapphire set deep into a swirl of brushed gold, understated, elegant. Unmistakably her. "You once told me you weren't ready for forever," he said, "but I think we've already started it, so this is just a way of saying I'm not going anywhere." Her eyes filled. "You already gave me everything." "I want to give you more," she nodded, unable to speak. He slid the ring on her finger and kissed her hand, then her lips, then the space behind her ear that made her knees go weak. They danced in the silence, no music, no expectations. Just them. Years passed, but the rhythm never changed. The bookstore thrived, becoming a haven for every misfit, romantic, and curious soul in the city. People came not just for books, but for the story of the librarian and the billionaire who never quite fit in until they found each other. On the day of their wedding, they didn't invite a crowd. Just a few close friends, a poet to officiate, and the entire ceremony took place in the back of the shop, beneath the painting that had once nearly knocked her into him. Adrian wore a navy suit. Vivienne wore a dress with pockets, and when they kissed, the whole room felt like it exhaled. They traveled when they wanted, stayed in when they didn't. Adrian still ran his empire, but now he did it from an office above a bookstore, with Vivienne editing manuscripts on the couch beside him. Every night, he closed the shop doors and locked them by hand. Every night, she waited for him upstairs with a cup of tea and a story to share. And every day, they chose each other again without hesitation, without fear, forever.